Okay, I've been exiled to the evils of room 10. Hello. So remember what we're gonna what I want you to do really is to look at some practical solutions um, for some practical solutions for unemployment. So this is based on kind of research and things that have been tried both recently and in the past. What you're going to find is if you go to the left hand window, what you're going to see in room 11, you're going to see two sets of articles. There are one pair that look like that. Which is the simple solution to tackle youth unemployment and policies from the past. And two, they're going to look like that. They're both based on some kind of UN research into kind of what works well in different countries around the world. So essentially, what I want you to do is to divide into pairs. So simply pairs. Or if that doesn't work, one of you have to make a three. So once and what we're going to do is obviously one person take two articles. Guess what? The other person takes two articles, and what you'll see is that at the bottom there are questions about those articles. So what we've got is what I want you to do is to adopt a two-stage process to this. So stage one, or three-stage process in fact. Stage one is obviously read the articles and have a go at answering questions. Stage two, what I want you to do, is to talk with your partner. And stage three, what I want you to do, is to then, somebody needs to kind of take control. Somebody needs then, to kind of ask around all the different groups and to try to kind of build together your understanding. Ramina, if you do that. So what I want you to do, Ramina, is simply say, well, okay, what do we know about Article 1? Just get the different views, just be me. What do we do about Article 2? Get the different views, be me, and so on and so forth. Once you've done that, I'll then talk it through, in another video, and then after that, I'll give you some summaries, that you can write down of the 4 key articles. So pause me at this point now. Chance to discuss all 4 of the programs. And there are 4 broad elements. So one was what was called the work program. So this is back from the financial crisis. You don't need to write this down. I'll come and sum it up later. And the work program was in many ways quite smart. What it was trying to do was to kind of say, well, we've got these long-term unemployed. Remember, they're outsiders in the system. So it's very hard for them to, get interviews. It's very hard for them to get through the door. Firms look at them and think, you've got no skills and so on. So what the work program did is it targeted these particular individuals who were long-term unemployed, or I think it said at risk of being long-term unemployed. And then it got a headhunting agency. So there's all these recruitment agencies out there. And he said, right, we're going to work with you. We'll pay you a 10% fee up front. And your job is to get these unemployed people a job. So what we've done is suddenly we've kind of given this private sector agency motivation to find these people jobs. We've given an initial payment up front. Then if they get a job and they keep it, for I can't remember, it's like 6 months, we pay the private sector agency the remainder of their fee, 90% of their fee. And it's quite smart. According to the data, it's kind of created between a quarter. It depends how you look at it, between 250,000 and 500,000 jobs. of people. The point is of people who probably wouldn't have found jobs anyway, otherwise, because they were long-term unemployed. They were perceived as not having the skills. At, if you think about it, relatively low cost, because had we not done this, they'd have still been being paid unemployment benefit again and again and again. The second one was this one, which was looking particularly. The second one was looking at kind of youth unemployment issues. And youth unemployment is a big problem in the US and the UK, but it's not a big problem in Germany and Sweden and so on. If you look at the statistics at the bottom, in Germany and Denmark, youth unemployment is 7 to 14%. Unemployment overall in Europe 24%. And in the US it was like it was kind of it was even higher again. And it's kind of saying, well, what seems to make the difference for young employees? Why is it that young employees don't get jobs? The answer is generally that they lack skills. So that was targeted at de-skilling. Your youth unemployment is kind of that they have a lack of skills. And at the top of the article, it's talking about this idea that American universities generally don't give people the skills they need. And the German system's completely different. It has this vocational element. And you look at Siemens, and it's just kind of, well, shit. They have 10,000 apprentices. That are within their scheme. Siemens is a German engineering firm. And they're paying basically these employees while they're learning. But of course, there's a lot in it for Siemens because they then have they're then training the employees themselves. That then saves them a lot of money in the long term. So, in this scheme in Germany, it works. There's a close link between private sector firms and the government. To provide these apprenticeships. The firms then go on to offer people work afterwards. As it says here, basically in Siemens, 84% of the people that go into the apprenticeship in the first scheme in the first place go on to get jobs in the end. Whereas in the US, only 0.3% of American youth do apprenticeships. It's 50 to 70% in Germany. Well, guess what? Germany has much lower youth unemployment. So if you get the apprenticeship schemes right, that's going to make a big difference. One was saying, which was this one, was, well, that's all very well, but the top bit was saying kind of youth unemployment scheme, youth employment schemes have their limits, and it was a critique essentially, of the first two articles, and what it's kind of saying was that's fine, but what we really need is a couple of other things, one. Is we've got to make sure, that like in the Germany case, there's no good really just kind of offering random apprenticeships. You need businesses to be heavily invested, in other words, are really keen to do it. And secondly, there's this idea of, what they called flexicurity, which was an interesting idea. But what basically that means is, on the one hand, you make it easy for firms to fire workers. And as we said before, that sounds counterintuitive, but of course, if it's easy to fire you, then I'm more encouraged to hire you. That sounds neoliberal and horrible, but at the same time, what happens, is that we give generous welfare payments. So you lose your job, but you're well supported. It should be fairly easy for you to get another one because firms are reasonably willing to hire you. Together with the fourth element, which is these things called active labour market policies. If you look at the chart again, Denmark, which was a big apprenticeship country, is also top of active labour market policies, which we'll talk about now. Come on, too very short. So this one, and the fourth one finally, is these things called, so thirdly was kind of, what's the damn thing called again? Flexicurity, and finally four, was this idea of ALPS, active labour market policies. What it was talking about was this idea that we've got kind of vocational training on the one hand, which is providing people actual training through the workplace. Assistance in job search, so that's a bit like the work program that we talked about earlier. Wage subsidies, which is basically if you take on an unemployed worker, the government will pay some of that wage for a bit. And finally, support for micro entrepreneurs or independent workers, people who are going to start up their own business. So to get them employed without them necessarily working for somebody. And what we're saying within that is that probably the single biggest thing you can do, is wage subsidies. That was the one that made the biggest difference. Because ultimately, it's expensive to take on a new worker, it's risky. So if you can reduce that cost, it's a bit like cutting payroll tax as well. It's the same sort of idea. Yeah, we said before that has a big impact. That type of thing makes an impact. Together with giving people skills for the long term, but vocational training, so that's based around the workplace. And finally, helping people to start up their own businesses. So no big surprises here. So we'll just go on finally now, and I'll just sum up, some notes, for you to write down. So what is it that seems to work in the real world? Yeah? One thing we've said is quite important. Yeah, is this idea of wage subsidies. Yeah, and that could come in the form of a decrease in payroll tax. Yeah, or it could be wage subsidies, or it could be a payment to firms willing to take on unemployed workers. Now, what you're doing essentially, we said that taking somebody on is a risk. We talked about the idea of market failure. Yeah, so what you're trying to do is we said that in labour markets, taking people on and training them, it has external benefits. Yeah, so it benefits other firms apart from you. So by subsidising you, what you're effectively doing is you are internalising the external benefit. And that's been shown to be effective, although of course it's relatively expensive. The main risk with this is that firms that would already have hired workers, firms that would have hired workers in any case, so firms that would have hired workers anyway still get paid. Because obviously I'm always going to claim the benefit from the government. Regardless of whether or not, they're not going to know whether or not I would have taken somebody on. Is obviously the importance of skills. When we're thinking about the long-term unemployed. And there was some kind of scary statistics. Where it's kind of in Germany, what we saw is that 70%, of 70% of kind of young people were on apprenticeship schemes. 50 to 70%, but up to 70% of German youths, were on apprenticeship schemes. Versus where it was 2%, so some 0.3%. In the US. And what we saw is that even during the middle of the financial crisis, Germany had very low youth unemployment. And youth unemployment, obviously, you don't want, because you're potentially creating people who will never work or will work, and we saw the consequences in terms of kind of impact on life choices, life chances, and so on and so forth. But the apprenticeships, The problem with say the UK, is apprenticeships are all very small scale. They're little firms, offering basically shitty apprenticeships that that don't really do a whole heap. Whereas when we looked at Germany, there was clear collaboration and planning, between the government and companies like Siemens. We saw there, so huge investment by Siemens into 10,000 apprenticeships. I'm going to run out of space on this, sorry. Into 10,000 apprenticeships. Which therefore means that you get this kind of scale and quality, that delivers then good outcomes for the German labour market, and again helps to keep German youth unemployment low. 4 were all based, 3 and 4 were all based around that, kind of United Nations research paper. And there were 2 main things that came out of that. So one was what they called flexicurity. So what he's talking about is the flex is to do with flexible labour markets, and what that was all about was this idea that it's easy to hire and fire, which we said before makes it cheap So if you can easily get rid of somebody, then you're much more likely to take them on in the first place. But if it's easy to fire people, that creates a big problem. With kind of insecurity. It's like, how am I going to feed my children, and so on and so forth. So what you also have is generous welfare. So we have high levels of unemployment benefits. And finally, linked to that, was this idea of, so that's all fine, but what's to stop people from just sitting around claiming their welfare? The third element of flexicurity is what I'm going to put as my, fourth solution, because you can use it separately, which is this idea of ALPS, ALPS, or active labour market policies, which are designed to get people into work. So it's like Job Centre plus, but done better, and I'll put that as a fourth one in a minute. So what you've got is, it's easy to hire and fire, so firms are willing to take people on. Generous welfare, so people lose their jobs, then they're not poor and destitute. But finally, once they are unemployed, we have active labour market policies, to get them back into work, so we don't end up paying unemployment benefit for ages and ages and ages. And that combination, according to the United Nations, seems, and research therefore, seems to be the right answer. So my last thing, that we'll sum up in a minute, is these active labour market policies. So these active labour market policies, the point about them, is we've actually already talked about, kind of many of them already. So this is kind of number 4. But what we're talking about is, these are interventionist solutions. So they're supply side, but we're not just, so the supply side, the supply side in Outlook. But what they're trying to do then is, by this kind of active business, is we look to actually get jobs, for the unemployed. And there are a variety of things that came into that. So there was, kind of things like, a bit like the work program. So kind of assistance in finding jobs. It suggested that wasn't actually the most effective. Within this, there was work subsidies, which we've already talked about, and vocational training that we've also talked about. But finally, the last element of all these 4 articles, was kind of support, for self-employment. So this idea that what we do is, if people are struggling, but they have, so often I might not have conventional skills to get me into a conventional job, but maybe I can start up a business. And if we can give people the right support, and that's not just financial support, often we're talking about money, but also kind of advice and contacts and so on, then they can start businesses and in turn employ somebody else. And again, according to the United Nations, on top of some of the things we've already talked about, those seem to be the most effective. Right, so that's that. If you haven't managed to sum all that up, then you can always play this back later. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.